Greetings, President Burks, Provost Bowditch, faculty, staff, family members, and friends. And to all the graduates, greetings and congratulations on completing your degrees. It is an honor to be with you, sharing your special day. You have completed master's and doctoral degrees in education, business, physical therapy, leadership, and science. I commend you for your dedication and your achievements. You have earned your degrees during a time of great change and considerable challenges. You may have experienced economic challenges or other obstacles, but you have all persevered. Remember this moment and appreciate your accomplishments. As you face the future and an accelerating pace of change, I challenge you to work to build better, more just communities. Be purposeful in your journey and keep in mind 3 recommendations. First, continue learning. Second, work collaboratively. And third, cultivate empathy for others. Through your graduate studies, you have learned new skills and methods of analysis. Case studies, clinical experiences, scientific methods may have been critical to your search for knowledge. My own career learning about human rights and teaching at Plymouth State have taught me the importance of seeking truth through a variety of sources and methods. My early research on authoritarianism in Guatemala began in the US presidential libraries and Guatemala's National Archives. It motivated me to conduct personal interviews to deepen my understanding. Initially, I carried out interviews with those who executed Guatemala's 30-year internal war. In these interviews, Guatemalan officers, political leaders, paramilitaries, and US military advisors portrayed their efforts as essential to defeat insurgency. Declassified documents from the Johnson Presidential Library, however, revealed that the security forces not only targeted a small insurgency, but also student leaders, Catholic clergy, journalists, and political opponents of the military government. It became clear to me that to more fully comprehend the government's policies and the violence of the 1980s, I needed to hear from the survivors of the counterinsurgency. I returned to Guatemala in 1995 with a US-based human rights organization, and I met with Catholic clergy, human rights leaders, and Maya activists. Of the people I interviewed and came to know through my research, those who lost loved ones had the most lasting impact. Human rights activist Paula Fuentes Castañón, for example, had been searching for more than a decade for her eldest son. He had been a student leader at Guatemala's University of San Carlos when he participated in a student parade critiquing the government. Shortly thereafter, on May 21st, 1984, fellow students reported that he was abducted by plainclothes armed men while he was walking outside the university in Guatemala City. At that time, the government was not only violating fundamental human rights, such as the right to freedom of speech, the press, religion, and assembly, it was also disappearing thousands of activists and opposition leaders in the capital and carrying out large-scale massacres of the Maya population in the rural highlands. Paula and other courageous relatives of those who disappeared founded a human rights organization to help them in their search for information about the disappearances of their family members. For more than 40 years, Guatemalan human rights activists worked to gather information about the killings. They testified at the trials of the military leaders, and they sought to unearth the memory of the Guatemalan genocide. My inquiry into human rights violations continued as I began teaching political science courses at Plymouth State in late 1995. Ethnic cleansing in Bosnia, the Rwandan genocide, and other human rights violations abroad led me to examine how authoritarian leaders dehumanized, scapegoated, and targeted ethnic minorities for elimination. Fear of difference was used by demagogic leaders in Nazi Germany, in Rwanda, and Guatemala to turn people against each other and to justify genocide. Authoritarian leaders relied on a willing population to support them in their violence and repression. My effort to understand human rights extended into my service on campus and in Concord. In 2007, Governor Lynch appointed me to the New Hampshire Commission for Human Rights, the HRC, and the Bipartisan Executive Council confirmed my nomination. My role with the HRC prompted me to learn new methods of legal research. Some of the commissioners were lawyers, but many of us were not formally trained in civil rights law. I found myself studying case law, training materials, and the Commission's founding statute. Employment law trainings also helped me understand federal regulations and evolving case law. I worked with other commissioners and one of the former executive directors to try to rewrite the administrative rules for the agency. I used my understanding of comparative case studies to analyze fair employment practices of agencies in other states. The research furthered my appreciation of New Hampshire's strong anti-discrimination law, and it also prompted my concern about the agency's lack of sufficient resources. Throughout my career, I have sought to continue learning and applying new skills. I encourage you to expand your skills and seek knowledge. Doing so will not only contribute to your professional success, it will better prepare you to meet the challenges ahead. My second piece of advice to you is to be collaborative. Being a good listener is important to building connections with others, whether they be your students, patients, colleagues, clients, or coworkers. You will work with people who hold different opinions from your own, and those with unique identities and experiences. Solicit the input of others and seek to understand their perspectives. A variety of viewpoints will inform your work, help you to develop partnerships, and build better communities. The Granite State has a rich legacy of collaboration and community building. For example, decisions for many of our towns continue to be made through a direct form of democracy at the annual town meeting. Keep abreast of issues impacting your local community and beyond. Study government institutions to learn about how policymaking and power structures will impact your work. And consider how you may influence policy. Find mentors in your place of employment and local organizations to advise you. Analyze what they do well and learn from them. Collaboration with others can amplify your influence, enable you as well to affect change. Change makers such as social entrepreneur William Drayton illustrate how mentoring may have a ripple effect. Drayton established Ashoka, a nonprofit organization headquartered in Virginia, to support innovative young people in the United States and 90 other countries. For more than 4 decades, Ashoka has been identifying promising change makers, assisting them with seed money, and providing fellowship through peer mentoring. Ashoka's awardees, known as fellows, are selected based on their creative ideas and determination. More than 400 fellows have participated in peer mentorship, assisting each other while developing a project to solve a social problem. The first changemaker supported by Ashoka was Gloria de Souza, a visionary educator in India whose ideas for teacher training transformed the grade school curriculum from rote memorization to a project-based approach. Her training model promoted education focused on the environment. The new curriculum produced impressive learning outcomes. Reading and other test scores doubled in the first 5 years, and the Indian government began supporting an expansion of the program across the country. In New Hampshire, our citizen legislators have worked collaboratively to improve the lives of all when they passed anti-discrimination legislation. In the 1950s, Representative William Craig of Manchester became concerned about New Hampshire hotels refusing accommodations to Jewish tourists. Craig would later recount how his concerns prompted the first attempts to pass anti-discrimination legislation in the Granite State. In 1961, he started working on a new bill with a representative from across the aisle, John Pillsbury. With the assistance of Representative George Angus as co-sponsor, the bill passed the House. It was expanded in conference committee and passed, and on July 7, 1965, Governor John King signed the legislation, known as RSA 354A. It prohibited discrimination based on race, creed, color, and national origin. The legislation applied to the areas of employment and housing, as well as public accommodations, that is, business establishments such as hotels and restaurants. In addition to establishing legal protections, the legislation created the New Hampshire Commission for Human Rights, an investigative and enforcement agency. Over the past 60 years, New Hampshire legislators, governors, and citizen activists have collaborated to expand anti-discrimination protections to also include age, sex, pregnancy, marital status, familial status, mental and physical disabilities, and most recently, sexual orientation and gender identity. Without investigations and an accessible process for resolving discrimination complaints, it would be much more difficult, if not impossible, for the New Hampshire courts to adjudicate discrimination claims. My third and final recommendation to you is to cultivate empathy. We will all face challenges and suffering at times in our lives. Who among us hasn't experienced disappointments, injuries, or even the loss of a loved one or friend? What we can take away from these difficulties is really what's important. These challenges can help us to develop empathy toward others. Growing up in a poor family and later working as a physician in Haiti led Dr. Paul Farmer to empathize with his patients and to understand the role that poverty plays in the development of health problems and the spread of disease. Dr. Farmer first recognized the need to assist the poorest and the sickest patients when he was treating those with HIV and tuberculosis in Haiti. Without treating seriously ill patients, he found it was impossible to stop the spread of disease. He established Partners in Health, a global nonprofit organization, and he transformed the way international health organizations design their treatment protocol. His treatment of patients with multi-drug resistant TB has been critical in impoverished countries, as well as in the United States. When one of the students in my humanitarianism course was inspired by Dr. Farmer's biography and wrote to him about the challenges she faced in her life, he wrote back to encourage her. Through his humanitarianism and mentorship, he demonstrated compassion and empathy for others. Empathy is a powerful tool for leadership and social progress. Those who may be different from you are no less worthy of your understanding or your human rights. By cultivating empathy in your interactions and decision-making, you have the capacity to work for the betterment of all and to meet the challenges we face today. Among those challenges, we are seeing new attempts to roll back human rights protections and the rule of law. Checks on the power of the executive were incorporated into the US Constitution to prevent the rise of an imperial president. Currently, we are witnessing disregard for the Constitution and the separation of powers. The administration is deporting people without respect for due process rights, rights provided to all persons by the 5th and the 14th Amendments of the Constitution. Immigrants are being denied their rights to a hearing in which they could present evidence to challenge the allegations against them. Over 200 immigrant detainees, the majority of whom have no criminal records, were sent to a brutal Salvadoran prison where they are being held indefinitely. The administration has also defied a Supreme Court order to facilitate the return of one of the detainees in El Salvador, and the government has acknowledged it is also exploring ways to incarcerate US citizens in foreign prisons. Although we all respect the need to keep our country safe, we must also do so in accordance with the Constitution and the rule of law. As you leave Plymouth State University, I challenge you to continue learning, building connections, cultivating empathy, so that you may affect change. We need your energy, your skills, and your humanitarianism to meet the challenges facing our communities, the Granite State, and the nation. Thank you to President Birx for the award and for the opportunity to address you here today. Congratulations and good luck to the graduate class of 2025.